Okay, looks like I am live, and I am joined today by my friends S-Man and Zach. I don't know if Zach, if you've got a handle. What is your YouTube handle? Yeah. I mean, yeah, because that's the only one we're actually familiar with. I mean, we might discuss other types of education, like for other countries, because I mean, I know in the EU, college is free, and all the complications that come with that sort of thing. But for the most part, we want to keep it to the U.S. So I've got in the description, I've got several topics lined up. So just education in general, as far as grades K through 12, the length of it in general, also what is taught. I'm going to talk about Common Core. Another area I want to talk about in this hangout is indoctrination. What makes something indoctrination? What makes something just regular education? Because I mean that gets into the whole area of religion in schools. I also mentioned, I brought up Common Core already. The other thing I want to talk about is college in general. Um, the higher education and all of that sort of thing. So hopefully we'll keep track of all of that and be able to cover all of those things within about an hour or so. We are we are starting a little bit later than planned, but I'm hoping, yeah, hoping to only go till about 8 o'clock today. We might end up going into 8:30 depending on the topic, but I can't go much past 8:30 because I have things to do today. Um, so, hmm. Oh, okay. So let's start with K through 12 in the United States. So, uh, well, actually, and this is something that Zach said he had some experience in why he wanted to join the Hangouts with, because he said you said you were homeschooled, right? Okay, so let's talk about the difference between being homeschooled and some of the things in the government schools. I'm not going to say public schools. I'm going to say government schools because that's what they are. So, because there, yeah, so there's okay. We'll talk about the difference between government schools, private schools, and homeschooling because so you were homeschooled your entire life. I had a bit of an experience with well, I would say kind of all three, although I was never technically homeschooled. So for grades K through 6, I went to the government schools, and then in 6th grade, I started going to a private school because my parents there's at our local church. So our church had a school program, and our parents moved us over into that program. Um, and so even though it was a private school and it was religiously oriented, the actual curriculum was a homeschooling curriculum. And so even though I was technically going to a private school every day, I was teaching myself by reading through the material, and then there would be a section of quizzes, and you answer the quizzes, and then you go and you grade the quizzes based on the answer keys and see how many, if you got it right or not. And then there was a test, and really the teachers were only there to help you if you got stuck on something, if you didn't understand something that was in the books. And and they would facilitate the tests. So you would grade your actual coursework up until the actual test to make sure that you were learning what was being taught up until the test time. And then during the test, you went up to a special area, whatever, where you couldn't have your material with you. You checked to make sure that you only had your number 2 pencil and all that sort of thing. Then you took the test, and then the teachers would grade the test and that sort of thing. Um, but so the thing that I want to point out here is the stuff that I was learning in middle school is now the same stuff that they're trying to teach me in college. So I am currently getting my bachelor's in college. And in order to do that, I had to take some of the prerequisite general education stuff. Mostly because some of the courses from my other school they either wouldn't accept or were like, oh, those aren't good enough, that sort of thing. The stuff that they were teaching me in my my general English class, I'm like, are you guys serious? How is this not public information? This is stuff that I was doing in middle school. Like the stuff I was doing in high school, as far as writing papers and stuff, were way more advanced than the stuff you're trying to get me to do in this college course. And so I want to get your experience as far as, so you've been homeschooled your entire life. Compare your education and the stuff that you were learning to what other people are telling you about their public school experience. Okay, and as far as the homeschooling goes, was there a specific curriculum that you were taking, or was this stuff that your mother was teaching you just like had textbooks and stuff like that and was teaching the classes, or was it a teach yourself type program? Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So so how did you graduate in that? Oh, and yeah, I'm gonna ask this question, and then we'll ask Man what his experience is. But how does that? Did you graduate? Was there? Did you have to take some kind of proficiency test in order to see if your education was equivalent to a high school or a regular high school graduate, or how did they determine that sort of thing? Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Um, okay, so I'm looking at the live chat, and Ryan says, "Is it just me, or is he silent? Hardly can hear him. I'm not sure who he's talking about." Let's, yeah, right. So I'm thinking that might be me, but I am not sure because you're coming through just fine for me. Oh, yeah.
I'm actually looking at S Man's
I think
chat
that
right
so. I
now.
think in S Man's it's coming through, and on mine it wasn't. Dang it.
I
So,
can hear you. I went to your stream and I could hear the audio off my phone, so I think you'll be all right.
no.
If anyone sounds quiet, I can always adjust everyone's volume.
Yeah, so I think I did not have my desktop audio for the Google Hangouts, and so I'm not sure if he was coming through at all. Sorry about that.
Well,
So
well, if
that's
yeah, if
so
they ever,
yeah. The entire stream should be more audible on S Man stream. So if you're here on my stream, sorry about that. Still doing the technical difficulties of setting things up. I'm not using my headset mic this week, and so
hide the
little
professionalism on your streams. I'm kidding.
little bit of the audio issues, still dealing with OBS and trying to get the best setup so that way it's all coming through clear. Um,
Yeah.
so that was my
Yeah,
mistake. He was just talking about his homeschooling experience, and now S Man. So you're still in school, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I'm in
and
the yeah, I'm in the 10th grade and classes I got, and this is just the example, like health education, theater foundations, military leadership, math, biology, language arts, world civilization, things like that. And I've never been homeschooled. when I first heard of homeschooling, I thought it was like a stigma, or if you were homeschooled, you'd get made fun of. But I can actually see why some people do it. But I've met some people who've been homeschooled and they were put in regular schools or government schools, like what you want to call them. I have my grades are pretty good actually at the moment. I have an A in math, which I'm so happy for. I have a B in military leadership, and the rest of the classes are between A minuses and Bs, and maybe a few Cs here.
And that military leadership, is that something that's coming through your school? Is that a school program, or because I know you mentioned something about being ROTC? Is that?
Yeah, that's what it's pretty much as you can call it.
But that ROTC is through the school.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why one of the things, just to touch on ROTC really quick, that's why in that program, when you are in the uniform, you're not allowed to have your hair touch your ears, or it cannot touch your collar. You have to have a cut quite often. Guys can't have facial hair.
Yeah,
chicks have to put their hair in a bun and things like that. So HUMANE and Zach would have to shave if they're in ROTC.
No, that's exactly why I don't shave anymore. 8 years in the Air Force, shaving every day that isn't or every weekday. Once you're out, like I shave maybe once a month, if that. Because I'm like, nope, not gonna shave every day. Yeah. Also, letting my hair grow out long. This would not fly. I've got a bit of a long hair in the back. It's getting kind of long on top.
When the school year ended last year, I didn't shave at all. I said, "Fuck that! I am not shaving." And and then by the time I had to, when I was going to re-enter ROTC, I had some cuts on my face, and I was all pissed off about that. I don't really have any complaints with how my curriculum is being handed out to me. I mean, the only thing I would complain about is the teachers and their presentations are skull-fuckingly boring. And I mean, I can pay attention just fine. It's just really, it's like watching paint dry is more entertaining or more easy to look at than what they're teaching. I mean, it's true though. I've heard
either they're super cringy or super ugly, right?
One of the teachers for math, she was telling us about algebra, and she was having us do this cringy fucking rap, and she ended up doing a gang sign and a gang sign for exponents, and I'm just thinking to myself, are you fucking crazy? I am not doing that, but I had to. It was so painful, like. But with ROTC, every time we're in there, we have to do the cadet creed, which I have taped on the far wall over there. And we have to answer questions all the time if we're in uniform, like who's the president of the United States, ranks and things like that. And overall, that's probably my favorite class because we're constantly having to do something. We're rarely ever sitting down. For world civilizations, I find that class to be even better than other classes because he's teaching us about various things. So far, we're talking about these leaders and some Greek gods, some stuff like that. Even though some of the classes, I would have to say, in my opinion, I don't see the point of teaching us because I don't buy that it's really going to get us any jobs in the future. Like there's a song called "Don't Stay in School." Even the guy wasn't really saying "Don't stay in school." He was complaining that some of the things they're teaching us are completely pointless and are not going to help us get a job.
Greek mythology.
Yeah, I don't buy it. I don't see where I'm going to get a job there. I'll probably Burger King, but that is besides, it was something like that.
Well, even then, Greek mythology doesn't pertain to frying fries and and cooking burgers.
The point I was going to make is I know I used War Corpse's talking point when I think he complains about the same thing. He would point out how, you got a degree in Greek mythology. Yeah, have fun having that on your wall while you're having to go to some restaurant to get a job. I mean, I don't really think there's much of a demand in that type of thing, or even reading some of Shakespeare's stupid stories.
Oh, what stupid stories? Have you actually read? I mean.
Yes, I have. That stupid fucking Romeo and Juliet. We had to read that all the time last year.
Romeo and Juliet is like his worst.
Okay.
Like, oh,
Okay,
Macbeth is
so-
amazing,
so- so-
Midsummer's
so-
Night Dream, but Romeo and Juliet is like the stupidest. It's like hey, everybody in this story is a complete moron and everybody sucks. There's no
No.
good characters. Even Romeo and Juliet, they're like, this.
I
I
think-
don't understand why people call this a love story, and you're like, it's a love story
No,
because it lasted 2 weeks. If it had gone like a month and a half, can you see like Romeo and Juliet having an argument and splitting up over over bills and stuff like that? That's not a love story. That is an
And
infatuation. That's a puppy love type thing.
Yeah, for when I was reading that stupid fucking story, and I'm thinking, I asked the teacher, "What the hell is the point of me?" I actually raised this complaint to her. I was nice about it, and I said, "I said, all right. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Shakespeare and all his tales and everything, but why do we have to learn about this?" I asked her what was the point, and I can't remember how she answered. But it was to do some social skills bullshit, and I wasn't buying it. But to me, what I got from the whole story was two teenagers with their hormone levels at toxic levels fell in love.
Yeah,
even though
in
they
love,
didn't grow in love.
with quotes
They
around
caused
it.
a ton of people to die, and then they caused their own deaths because of their own stupidity, and it was a waste of time to read or look at. And I thought,
If
hey, at least we
anything, that
passed the
should retain
time.
that should retain to your sex ed class and be taught as a way to not have a relationship.
Yeah, it's like if you're gonna.
Oh, I think I'm gonna have a bit of a tangent on the whole. Some states, I've heard people argue that religion gets in the way because people say that some things they would teach in sex ed gets lost due to some people and their religious motives.
Hey, so son of Lucifer, very quickly.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Very quickly, son of Lucifer says it's about pedophilia. I don't know if he's referring to Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet.
If I'm not mistaken, she was 16 and he was 18.
No, that would be pedophilia. I mean, it's a bit. It's still a stupid
she
love
might
story.
have been younger than that, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
But
yeah,
what was
Lonely
you
Wolf
saying?
is in the. Oh yeah. And certain things that they teach us, like I had a teacher in this class called Teen Living, even though I really considered it sex ed, and she's all telling us about how you should not have sex before marriage. Yeah, it was called Teen Living. I don't know why, but I guess it was not so people would freak out and say, "It has the word sex in the name of the course." I mean,
all right. So I just want to bring this up. Okay, so Ryan says, "Is there a fictional story that accurately depicts a romantic relationship?" And then Sinister D Boy replies, "Yes, Twilight." I hope Twilight is not in the curriculum for any school whatsoever.
It's not in my school.
No, and now the modern equivalent of Romeo and Juliet is probably going to be 50 Shades of Grey, where they're teaching that in school, and they're like, look at the craftsmen of these. Oh no, it is like the actual lines from that book. You're like, how did this catch on with anyone? This sounds like it's written by a 12-year-old. Like a 12-year-old writing fanfic of Twilight. That's how this book sounds. It is the most mindless, vapid book. It is.
Lonely Wolf in the chat says Lonely Wolf 1980 says I had students beg me to do a math rap for quadratic formula. I didn't want to do that. All right, Lonely Wolf. I cannot imagine having students that painful. And
when you say rap, was it like an 80s style rap where everything was all, let's just say it kind of choppy and to this stupid beat? Was it that style of rap? It wasn't like a Snoop Dogg rap or an NWA rap. No, it was like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air style rap, right?
Hey, look at the chat, S-Man. Lonely Wolf 1980 says, if Twilight is introduced to Western education, I will side with North Korea.
Oh, God. I want to agree with you.
You know, War Corps is already siding with North Korea ever since he had to do that response video to that Indian feminist. Did you see that video, man?
On your channel?
No. On War Corps's new channel, Dave Nordahl, he responds to an Indian feminist, like a Hindu Indian feminist. And he says at the end of that video, okay, looks like we're all fucked. Kim Jong-un, just bring the nukes. So he's already siding with North Korea. He got you beat, Lonely Wolf.
Yeah, and one thing I'd have to say with some of the things that they teach us about domestic violence and how to handle kids and all that stuff, which is great. And as it turns out, my class, me and everyone in there, we were the last people to ever be in teen living, as the state of Utah had scrapped the course when the school year was over, which was pretty unfortunate. But so far, I wouldn't really have any other complaints other than some of the things they teach us make no goddamn sense as to how. I think we should only be teaching things that will help people get jobs. This gender studies degree, I know this is in college, but I just want to say something about that. That shit is nonsense. It's not going to help you do anything.
Don't you know, S-Man, you have to get educated on the gender spectrum. That's that's where that you start to look that shit up yourself.
Okay. Yeah, and
Owen McConnell says you have to learn it yourself.
Yeah, here's where we can kind of touch into the indoctrination portion, where they've got this stupid unicorn, the gender unicorn or whatever. Like, no, you've seen this, right?
What?
It's
what?
it's like Uni the Unicorn or something like that, where it's trying to teach like children about non-binary, and they say it's intended for like 10 and 11-year-olds. But when it's like cartoon, like something you would expect to see on PBS, or I mean not PBS, on Nick Jr. or something like that, and you're like, that's not a 10-year-old audience that you're trying to reach with this. Let me pull that up on another screen here.
Oh God. Yeah. Holy fuck.
So very quickly, I gotta ask before I lose this. S-Man, you were talking about William Shakespeare and how it's pretty much useless.
Yep, it's about as useful.
William Shakespeare aside, though, what do you think about old philosophers like, say, Socrates, Aristotle, and the like?
I don't have anything against them. Actually, I think we've been kind of reading up on them a little bit. We just started yesterday. So tomorrow I have to continue that, and it's gonna be a very brief day tomorrow. But since it's a Friday,
being taught their quotes in 101 class.
Oh, being taught their quotes. We haven't really actually gone into their quotes. We've been briefly touching up upon some of their histories of like Greek gods and things like that. And
so I've got pulled up on my screen the gender unicorn. It's oh dang it. Oops.
Oh,
so
what you're doing now?
The graphic by TSER. I've got gender identity, female, woman, girl, male, man, boy, other genders, gender expression, feminine, masculine, other, sex assigned at birth, female, male, other, intersex, physically attracted. Like, okay. No, this is, like, they say that it's for children that are entering puberty and all that sort of thing, but look at, I don't know if you can see the cartoon.
Bullshit.
Like, what freaking 11 and 12-year-old is like, oh, hey, this appeals to me. Like, maybe the people who wrote this are completely moronic and like, oh, little kids are all the same. But this is something I would expect to see.
It's the fan base of queer kids stuff.
Yeah, this is something I would expect in a preschool, not somebody who's like 7 or not a 10 or 11-year-old. This is something I would expect to see in preschool and kindergarten. That's the type of material, and yet they're oh dang it! I don't want to go to the full article anyway. And then they got physically attracted to and emotionally attracted to. What? I don't know what those are supposed to be.
I'm gonna read. Yeah. I'm gonna read the chat a little bit.
Emotionally attracted to.
That makes no sense.
Does that mean that I like to hang out with women, but I'm sexually attracted to dudes? Is that what they're kind of implying here? I don't understand this at all.
Yeah. All right. So, Lonely Wolf 1980 says they still have to teach you how not to be a. Wait, they still have to teach you how not to be a rapist. Well, I cannot imagine them not doing that. And then Tom Savage says, I went to play a video game and I came back and somehow we're talking about Soulja Boy and Twilight pedophilia.
Getting the subjects kind of mixed up. We was talking about how them two mainly were trash talking Twilight, and then a little earlier we were talking about pedophilia being tied to William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, and I'd have to say if the teachers at the school could show, all right, this is what we're teaching you, and this will help you get a job, and they can explain how it would do that, then I wouldn't complain.
Well, the idea behind that is you're analyzing great works of literature, so that way you can get familiar with story structure, with writing styles. So that was my experience, like, because I mean, you start off with the earliest one. You start off with the they made a stupid CGI movie of it. The Norse story. What was that called? I'm drawing a blank on it. Beowulf. So
Antichrist is here. Burn him.
So you start off reading Beowulf, and it is terrible. It is horribly written. It is one of the worst poems / pieces of writing I've ever had to read. I mean, not story wise. Story wise, it's very basic. I mean, but as far as the whole layout of how it's worded and the entire story arc is just completely brain dead. And yet, for some reason, that story arc is repeated by a lot of movies currently. Like, hey, guy goes to try to kill some monster, and then he successfully beats it, and then and then he becomes king, and then the monster comes back. And you're like, wait, that's the story of Beowulf? What? Well, really, the story of Beowulf, he was supposed to kill so he killed the monster, the Grendel, and then he's supposed to kill Grendel's mom, and instead of killing Grendel's mom, he sleeps with her, and then and then when he becomes king and he takes over the kingdom, and then she comes back, and so it's a really weird story. I don't understand, but I mean, it's very basic. Just let's kill and fuck our way into a solution. That is how Beowulf came off to me, and well, the actual prose.
Was Game of Thrones based off of that by chance?
No, Game of Thrones is actually based off of the War of the Roses, which is something that people don't quite, or at least a lot of people that I've talked to, unless they are like the more intellectual type, a lot of the other just fans that are fans of for the sex and violence, they don't even pick up that it's based off of actual historical events, and a lot of the characters, a lot of the story progression is exactly the details of actual history. So which makes the show kind of fall off, because there are characters that are in the books that are not included in the movies at all, and one of those characters is based off an actual historical figure who was the son of a king, who was kind of exiled and was kept off to the side or whatever, and then he and the bannermen or whatever rallied around him when he was of age, and then they kind of came back as an army trying to take back, I think this was England at the time. So one of the characters in Game of Thrones mirrors that exact story, where he was in hiding, and everybody thought he was dead, but really, he was being protected and sheltered in a different place, and then came back to Westeros and was supposed to be part of the invading force with Daenerys, but that got cut completely from the show.
Yeah. And when it comes to that, actually makes a lot of sense. To teach them story structure and things like that. I mean, I don't entirely mind it. It's just sometimes I get a bit lackadaisical with it because I'm like, I'd rather, because it would feel like we're just wasting our time and reading some stories that no one in the class really gave a damn about, or if they did, they must have had some very questionable views on love and shit like that.
Oh yeah, no, I think it is definitely taught incorrectly in a lot of the schools from what people are telling me, because people still espouse Romeo and Juliet as this great love story, and it's not a great love story. It is a warning. It is a tale. It is the don't be like any of these people sort of thing. It is a epic tragedy, and not because these two people were in love. There is that aspect of, they were so madly in love with each other they were willing to die for each other sort of thing. But the entire story was these people are at war with each other over nothing, and it is causing nothing but pain and anguish for everybody involved. And had they not been at their war, these two people probably would have ended up together, and then, a month or two later, they'd be like, oh, well, the sex was good, but we've got nothing else in common. All right, bye. See you later. I would like to see something have the Romeo and Juliet if their plan had succeeded, and then them just getting bored with each other and being like, well, what else do we have in common? Sex, and that's about it. We don't do anything else in the entire story but sleep with each other, and talk about how pretty you are, and it's like everything is superficial. It is the most superficial love story ever.
I have to completely agree with that.
But does sound kind of stupid.
But I really like Much Ado About Nothing and Midsummer's Night Dream, which I think is a much better take on, if you're gonna, both of those are comedies, and Midsummer's Night Dream is amazing because the entire play is in rhyme, and it is a very long play. The entire thing is in a rhyming prose. It is actually. And it has some, even when it's all rhyming, it still has some amazing quotable moments and memorable stuff. So that is my favorite Shakespeare play of all time, is A Midsummer's Night Dream.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to read some of the chat again, just to catch up and absorb that philosophy, S-Man, and mythology, etc. before they try to teach you postmodernism. Then Lonely Wolf 1980 says, it doesn't directly relate to jobs, but grounding in ancient history, mythology, and literature are relevant for your personal life. Education should prepare you for jobs, but also personal philosophical. I forgot the English language. My bad. Spiritual and intellectual quests. And then Tom Savage has a lot to say. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory has lots of pedophilia. His name is Willy Wonka. He gave Charlie a golden ticket.
Really?
To play on golden showers. And candy is the number one kid attracting item pedophiles use. It can't even, it's too obvious. How about a candy factory? And how about we have a bunch of kids come in there and look at Laffy Taffy?
Oh. Yeah, and it is a windowless factory, so it's basically like the windowless van, just supersized. Good insight. Yeah, so
wow, you're going to ruin people's childhood. Thank you, S-Man.
So Ryan, I remember watching Tromeo and Juliet, and it's kind of that, but it is more just a unwatchable, how disgusting can we get for no reason? And that's like most Tromaville movies. Just I don't know if you guys know what Troma films are, but it's the Toxic Avenger was their big hit. And they are absolutely cheesy gore fest, and it makes them awesome and also unwatchable at the same time. If you like the movies that are so bad they're good, that is everything Troma has ever released. But you can for me, I can watch them and laugh once, and then I can never go back to them because it's just so ridiculous and over the top and just horrible. I like a film with a bit of brain behind it, and not brain matter. Actual intelligence, not. Okay, but I think we kind of got off a topic here. But but I think those stories are being taught, and people are just being quizzed about the actual material of the story to see, hey, did you read the story, and did you understand what was going on in the story? And I'm like, but that's not the purpose of reading those works of art that are considered classics and masterpieces. The reason you're reading them is not just for the story overall, is to learn what they did to become masterpieces, what the authors did, how they structured the story. Like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, if you read that is a great work of horror masterpiece for a reason. Not only is the concept brilliant, because Frankenstein's monster is not the bad guy. Dr. Frankenstein is the bad guy. He is the true monster of the story, and it does a great job of illustrating that sort of thing. But most people, when they hear Frankenstein's monster, they think the big mean guy with the bolts and that sort of thing. But in her story, the human who created the human who revived the dead was the true enemy. It was a true evil guy. And so I don't know if you guys know who Kenneth Branagh is, but he's one of my favorite directors because he does mostly Shakespeare stories and turns them into movies. But he did a really great job of turning Frankenstein from the book into a movie. And it emphasized that point because Robert De Niro plays Frankenstein's monster, and he's intelligent. And he realizes what Dr. Frankenstein has done to him, and he hates it. But I believe in the actual original story and in the movie, he is technically unkillable because he's already died. But Dr. Frankenstein's treatment of him is absolutely abhorrent. I mean, and just completely, like, not only did he do something that this guy was not comfortable with, showed no regard for the morality and the ethics of it, but then he goes one step further. And so, The Bride of Frankenstein, they made all those old classic movies about the Bride of Frankenstein, and everybody thinks that the Bride of Frankenstein was for Frankenstein's monster. But it was actually for Dr. Frankenstein himself. His fiance ends up dying, and then he revives her for himself because it's a selfish. He doesn't care about the consequences for anybody else. He doesn't care about how other people are treated. It's all for him, and it is an analysis of the depths of human depravity. And that's what I got from it. And that's the sort of thing that you're supposed to be analyzing these stories to try to get past the surface of the general things that people accept and understand about these classic works. Is you're supposed to be understanding, okay, this is how the story is presented. This is the underlying core idea and how brilliant this is. And you're supposed to be inspired by those sorts of things. And so you read all these classic things and all these great works, and you try to emulate that when you're writing your own stuff. I guess part of English is to try to inspire people to become great authors and stuff like that. But the main idea is learn how stories are structured, and I guess this would kind of tie into an actual useful ability, is once you can analyze works of art like literature, and you can turn your own writing into kind of mirroring that, even for a small essay, or it's to help you to become a better communicator. Because that's what these books ultimately did, is they effectively communicated profound ideas in engaging ways, which is what you're supposed to be trying to do in essays. Essays are...
Zach,
your audio is... Yeah, try it again.
I'm sorry.
Is it going all transform?
Oh my god.
Ooh,
yes,
yeah.
you sound like Caitlyn Jenner.
Like Caitlyn Jenner with one of those when the guys have their larynx removed for throat cancer. You sound like you have one of those,
smoke.
And yeah.
Oh,
You've got one of those up to your throat while you're talking.
Yeah,
I guess
don't smoke.
Branded transphobes, everybody. All right. Okay. So, Lonely Wolf 1980 says, "I would so teach 'Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared' YouTube series. It is an exercise in drawing out metaphors.
Oh,
Not until 10th grade, though."
That "Don't hug me, I'm scared." I don't like. I would not want to be left alone in the same room with the creators of that, because that is the weirdest out there crazy. Yeah, whoever those guys are, I would not trust them with my safety. But I mean, they're interesting to watch, and just crazy, mind blowing, just insanity.
You mentioned the point of how reading all these stories is essential to help improve your own communication form.
Yeah.
Excuse me, and I guess that's something that I kind of need, because I noticed that in my opening monologue there, when you guys were asking me about my homeschooling experience, I think I might have rambled on a little bit in my show.
Yeah.
No, that's something. I think that's something we all struggle with. Is sometimes we ramble a little bit. That's why usually, if we're to make our own videos on this, I think probably easier on all of us, because then we ramble on, we just cut that out, things like that. But that's fine.
Yeah, and that's another thing. So I mean, this is an area I did want to catch up on, or I guess, elaborate on is K through 12 necessary, or is it a good system for teaching people? Because like what you were saying about all of us kind of make YouTube videos. I mean, although that's not my primary profession, in order to get better at making YouTube videos, what do? You watch other YouTubers. You see what other people are doing. And you're like, okay, that's actually a good idea. I'm going to start incorporating that into my stuff. Or you get comments and feedback and stuff like that from people who have seen your videos, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to start doing that in videos from now on. So you're learning through experience and through watching other people. But everything I'm doing on YouTube and everything that you've done on YouTube, you didn't learn from school. You learned from other people outside of school on your own. This is all something like I don't know if anybody here is making a living off of this yet. But I do know plenty of others that have made that their entire living, and they did it by watching other people. They didn't learn those skills in school.
Yeah.
Like Hunter Avalon is still pretty young. I think he may be 20, maybe 21, but he started his YouTube career when he was still in high school. And I'm like, he wasn't taking a video production class to my knowledge, and he's never talked about that sort of thing. And yet now he does YouTube like on a full-time basis. At least that's my understanding of it. Although with the recent demonetizations and all that stuff going around, I don't think I'm not sure if he's still doing it as a full-time career.
Yeah, I don't like as you're telling me this, I'm thinking, are you sure we're talking about the same YouTube? But I get where you're going with that. My thing is, if you want to improve, you of course I think do that, of course, and of course rewatch your own videos and any editing mistakes or things where you're like, if I had to do this video a second time, this would be here, that wouldn't be there,
Yeah. And so here's something. So when I was in school, I remember learning about basic economics, about supply and demand, which in my stream about this, I kind of messed up on it. So as supply increases, the price goes down, but as demand increases, the price goes up. And so those two have an inverse ratio or inverse relationship to each other, and depending on how they relate to each other, that's usually how you can determine the price of something. And I remember learning about that in elementary school. But it seems like a lot of people that I'm talking to nowadays about economics in general have forgotten even that basic part, or have never learned that basic part. There's another thing, like when I was going through school, they were teaching us about nutritional facts and basics and how to read the back of nutritional labels and how to prepare a diet and stuff like that. But most of the people that I'm talking to nowadays, like that's something that isn't covered in schools at all nowadays, from what I understand.
Yeah, in my school in ROTC, which I didn't really get why they were teaching us in ROTC, but hey, they're teaching us in a class in general. He says, all right, he's telling us to make better food choices, to read the back of food labels and things like that. And I was glad that he was telling us this, even if it's not really didn't seem all that related to military leadership. At least we're being taught in general.
It's definitely related to your military career. Fitness and nutrition are a huge part of if you're going to go military. Fitness and nutrition are huge.
I'm considering going personally. I've bordered between Army and Navy because I've had family in the Army and Navy. And then I had someone tell me to do the Marine Corps, which I'm still, of course, thinking about this because it's like obviously I do understand that that's something you can't just back out of. So of course I think about it a lot.
It takes a special mindset to go military, it takes a special mindset to go military. It takes an even more special mind to go Marines, and that is not a dig against people who are in the Marines. Those are the most dedicated, like. I'm trying to say this in a positive way, but I can't think of any other word to describe it other than insane, because to me, what those people do is outright insane, because the Marines are the absolute front line. They're the people who get deployed to the areas where we have no military support, where we have no military presence whatsoever. They are the spearhead for our military. They go in, they take out the hostile force, and they establish a military base, and then the Army comes by behind them in order to maintain that stronghold. But the Marines, the Marines take a different set of mind completely from all the other branches of the military. And I have nothing but respect for people of the Marines because that is something I could never do. I was Air Force, and I see. So I was Air Force, and usually my job was an 8-hour day. And so when we were in tech school, we had so even though we were on an Air Force base, there was a dorm that was set aside for the Navy, and in that Navy dorm there was a floor for the Marines. And they had set aside a floor for the Air Force because the Air Force people had outgrown our other lodgings and stuff like that. And so I was in there for 2 or 3 weeks. But I would go to, so when I'm waking up for the day, in order to get ready for classes, and we got to meet up and form and all that sort of things, everybody who's in the Marines has already been up for an hour and a half doing stuff around to clean up the building, and then they go to formation at this around the same time as everybody else. Then they go to class, and then when they're done with class, we get out of class, we do our little PT, and we're calling it a day. Hey, our work's done for the day. We're gonna go hang out and play video games or read books or whatever. The Marines are out there carrying backpacks filled with cinder blocks and running the same thing we just ran. And I'm like, what? So
Yeah,
they were doing everything we were doing and then some. So it takes a... Now, the other thing I want to say about military, or the Marines, and I don't want this to discourage you, I want you to know what you're getting yourself into. The only way to be a successful Marine is you have to be completely brainwashed. I don't know if there's any other way, because of what their job is. Their job is so dedicated to, if they are, since they are on the front lines and they're the ones who are deployed immediately for hostile forces, they have to be able to pull that trigger without a second thought. The Army, on the other hand, if you look at statistics and all this sort of thing, it is more likely for somebody to shoot and miss on purpose. So in wars, even though there's huge body counts, most of the time people are firing and intentionally missing the enemy because they don't have that mindset of, they have that mindset of, even though they're the enemy, they're still a person. And so a lot of times you will see, there's all kinds of statistics about this, and a lot of psychologists or psychiatrists and psychologists who've written about this sort of thing, where the majority of the bullets fired in a war aren't at anybody. They're actually over people's heads or to the sides of them, where they're not going to actually hit anybody.
Sounds like the military is getting kind of pussified, maybe.
No. That has been throughout. All history, and also your mic is doing that thing. So I don't think it's your connection. Try unplugging and plugging your mic back in. But no, this is most wars. Not just in recent history, and not just the U.S. This is militaries overall. It's a little harder to do back when we were still using swords and shields and spears and stuff. But so even in the Revolutionary War and that sort of thing, a lot of times people would just fire to fire, to make it look like they're doing something, but they don't want to actually end a human life, sort of thing. But the Marines, they can't afford that sort of thing because they are a smaller group. They have to. So the only way to get people into that zone is brainwashing. And so I think from my military experience, the most brainwashed is the Marines. Second most brainwashed is the Navy, then the Army, and then the Air Force. As far as because the Air Force, even while there is some degree of brainwashing, because that's entirely what boot camp is designed to do, it's designed to stop getting you to be an individual and get you to become part of a collective group. So even though boot camp does that, it hits the reset button on you, and you are now a group as a unit as opposed to an individual. Then tech school kind of branches that out a little bit, and in the Air Force, our tech school tried to get us, at least in my profession, to think more critically. That was part of, I'm a computer programmer, so I have to be able to think critically and analyze situations and think independently. So even though I feel like I was partially brainwashed in boot camp, I think tech school kind of was like, yeah, all of that other stuff. Let's kind of get you out of that a little bit in this area. But I still had I was still chanting the stuff, drop bombs, kill people, huh? And I'm like, wait a minute, and And this is part of my transition. I was in the Air Force for 8 years, and for the first 2 or 3 years of that, I was the blinders on. Everything the government does is great. Everything the military does is great. And it was during that last 5 years that I started to, the veneer started to chip away from me, and I was like, wait a minute. What am I doing here exactly? What is the military doing? What is the government doing? Why is there all this? Yeah, I don't want to get sidetracked completely into military here, but I guess that is part of our education, is how it's actually. Let's tie this into education, and the entire education system is sort of like brainwashing people to become employees. Right? Is that? I know you're still in school, but if you read the actual history of when schools were introduced, it was I want to say it was I want to name the country and I can't remember. It's like something with a P. It's either Portugal or Prague, and I can't. I'm like maybe I'm wrong completely on that, but it was their system designed to create factory workers and soldiers, and so that's why they started doing structured school that is very similar to the way the United States school or the United States government schools are run today. They're all modeled off of that same structure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So to sign a Lucifer 666, 3 6s and a 9. I can't think straight tonight. What are your experiences with the? I think you said in the chat you were homeschooled.
Yeah, it's my first year this year.
Yeah.
I'm in 11th grade.
Yeah, I'm gonna adjust your audio a bit because you're kind of low. I'll raise your volume. All right. So.
All right. I do have a couple questions here. So Ryan asks, with the military drones on the rise, is there high physical requirements for being a drone pilot? Not for being the pilot itself, but for being in the military. There are high physical standards, but I could see them possibly relaxing those for drone pilots in the future, which I think is a dangerous trend. Because the relaxing, once a standard is relaxed, it is nearly impossible to increase it, and that's what we're seeing more and more in the military.
Yeah. Actually,
but the other thing with the military drones is the putting civilians behind the trigger, which is something that is becoming more and more commonplace.
Yeah. Speaking of that, as I can recall, I know this might sound a little off track, but this is just because you brought my mind to it. Last year, when the election was coming to a close, and we were all being told, because none of us actually knew this in ROTC, they said, "All right, we're going to have a new president, and you cannot badmouth the president," which I can get why, of course, I understand that, and a lot of and the instructor, he says, "All right." When Obama was elected and reelected, he said he wasn't happy with it, but he, of course, stood by his president. And he explained that he felt Obama had relaxed some military protocols or guidelines, or I can't remember how exactly he phrased it. And he said he wasn't very happy with that. And he said he would be voting third party. And he says now let's not talk politics. And then we got back to where we had to get to. Lonely Wolf 1980 also asks, does that mean SJWs are good Marines? No, I'd have to answer no, they're not good Marines, because the picking up of the gun is toxic masculinity. And Zach is gone.
No. Marines, even the female Marines are like the most manly people I have ever met. If I was in a fight, I definitely want them on my side as opposed to against me, because even if it's 1 versus 15, I'd bet on the Marine.
Yeah.
The Jarhead is going to win that fight, because I don't know what it is. It's the it's like they get in this zone of I'm going to do this no matter what type thing. It is. I mean, when you're talking with them, they're hella cool and stuff. But when they're in military mode, because you could definitely see this switch of when they're relaxing and when they go full. I mean, it's like they're a freaking Terminator. I don't know how else to kind of explain that.
Yeah.
They enter a different zone.
Yeah. All right, so
Yeah.
Zach is saying in the chat that his internet connection is going full retard. Please stand by. All right, Zach.
Okay.
But
All right.
that's why he had to go. So,
What were you asking me, man?
I was going to ask. So you've never been? Have you ever been in public school, or is this just the entire?
Yes.
Okay.
This is my first year in being homeschooled.
How's that been for you?
It has its perks, but it has its downs as well.
Oh, it's got its Down syndrome. Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, it does.
Yep. I mean, I've met some people who said they've been homeschooled, and they said it was very. Some people said it was better than public school. I think even I've seen YouTubers talk about it. Like Hunter Avalon, I think he was homeschooled, and he said it was better than the public education system. If I'm correct.
Oh no! And if you look at statistics,
It's more interesting.
If you look at the statistics of test scores, like they've got those CATs, the CAT, California Achievement Test. If you look at homeschools versus public schools, homeschools are just, I mean, they beat them in every category.
Yeah.
It is.
If I gotta say this, yeah, being homeschooled, public school, I feel like they teach us shit because, as you said, like when schools were starting, they were trying to create workers and soldiers, and do you believe they still do that today as well?
Oh, I think it's even worse today. This is something that will transition into Common Core, and like I said, I do have other stuff to do, so we'll try to keep this within the next 20 minutes or so. Common Core is, I don't know what is going on there, but they are trying to teach people the most ridiculous way of doing things, and it is intentionally trying to teach people not to do the most logical thing, but to do the thing the way that they are told to do something. That, I mean, I can't.
You must obey. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's plenty of examples of, you can look this up, of math problems where they're trying to teach people to count by 100s or 10s or something like that up to the next number when they're doing addition and subtraction. It's like, why are you adding all these extra steps in there? You're like, oh, let's do 100 minus 85. Well, you take the 85, and then we're going to add 10 so it gets to 95. And then we're going to add 5 so it's 100. So the difference is 10 plus 5. And you're like, what is wrong with you people?
Lost at that point.
Yeah.
And I've been seeing it's actually in my state, in the state of Utah. I don't know what state HUMANE is in. I know Lucifer's told me that he's in Florida.
Yes.
Yeah, as for my state, I used to see it as like a pretty big fight between those in favor of Common Core and those against it. And I'd see signs saying stop Common Core. It drowns out any pro Common Core signs. You know.
No, it is, yeah. Like, so I don't know. Mostly it's apparent in math. Because that's the easiest place where you can see what is going on here. No, but if I've read the actual Common Core, the standards, and they don't seem that bad. I mean, they seem like, okay, that's pretty logical. Yeah, we'd want that in our schools. Yeah, we'd want that in our schools. But the textbooks that are coming out at the other end as being Common Core approved don't seem to abide by those same standards. And they all have these kind of weird ways of doing things that you're like, you're teaching people to do things the complicated way. Mm-hmm. And it's trying to get people to follow a specific set of rules of like, this is how you do it. And if you try it any other way, it's going to be marked as wrong. If you try to do your math problem and you don't do this weird, complicated way that we're showing you, then the question gets marked wrong. And it's like, the other thing is, there's also the situation where as long as you show the work that you followed this process that we are showing you to use, even if you get the wrong answer by using that process, it'll be marked correct because, hey, you did the steps correctly. And I'm like, that is completely backwards from how I went to school. When I went to school, it was you got the right answer. You got the right answer. That you get the full credit for it because you got to the right answer. Even if you did all of the steps correctly, if you show all your work of, oh, this is what I did, and you're using the quadratic equation and you did it all correctly, but you've got a rounding error or you forgot to carry the 1 or something like that, and your answer's wrong. Well, the whole problem's wrong. So even though they wanted you to show your work at the end because they wanted to see that you were applying some of the principles, and at least they could see that way you could actually track where you went wrong. Whereas if you just wrote in 44 as your answer, they're like, well, where is this coming from? It's wrong, but I don't know. That like I can't see, you didn't write down any of your work, so I can't tell you where you went wrong, sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Lonely Wolf 1980. He's a teacher actually. He says I teach math. Don't get me started on all the bullshit about adding on all this stuff. It confuses the shit out of the students.
Yeah. And it makes
Zach
them,
says his computer's all fucked. So yeah, as you were saying.
Yeah, it makes them feel stupid when they can't do something that is a simple math problem. And like looking at some of these math problems, it's like, I know the answer. I don't know why that's the answer, but I know that's the answer. So usually with me in tests, when it comes to math, I will look at the question and then look at the answers and be like, okay, that's the answer. And then I will have to reverse engineer as to why that's the appropriate answer, because I'm like, I know that's the correct one and I'll mark it for now, but my brain's like, well, what if I'm wrong? And I keep second guessing myself, and then I'll write out this huge problem and reverse engineer as to why that's the correct answer. I'm like, oh, well, I had it right in the first time. I just wasted an extra 5 minutes on the test trying to figure out why that was the appropriate answer.
Yeah.
So that is my...
Those addition/subtraction algorithms are not grounded in the underlying mathematical principles such as place value. Lonely Wolf says, and since he's a teacher, I think we can all. I think I can pretty much. I don't disagree with anything he's saying. I've heard people, and this might sound just a tad off the topic, but I've heard people argue on whether or not teachers are paid adequately for their job, and I've even spoken to teachers about this, and they said that they wouldn't really say how much they're paid, but they would say that it's kind of pitiful, especially with the state of Utah and everything.
Well, compared to what? That's the...
Yeah,
that's the
like I don't know what the national average is. I'd have to, of course, do further looking into that. So I can't necessarily say, yes, they are under or paid or overpaid, but...
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is it depends on what they're comparing how much they get paid to. If they're just saying, oh, well, teachers only earn this much and other professions earn this much, well, then teachers are underpaid. And you're like, well, that's a completely different industry. It's a completely different career field. So you have to see, first of all, if that other career field is being paid appropriately based on how much they're actually contributing to society. And I got into this big long Twitter argument with some people about this, because they were trying to argue that the pay gap did exist. Or no, that they weren't trying to argue that the pay gap existed. They were saying, yeah, we accept that women tend to go to these professions that pay less, but why do those professions pay less? And I was like, are you serious? Are you trying to tell me that teachers and counselors and nurses deserve the same kind of pays as engineers and surgeons and
doctors?
Yeah, to me that's
yeah.
I find that utterly ridiculous. When people are like, some cook in a kitchen should be paid the same as a doctor. And just to sum up on that point, I think it's absolute nonsense.
Yeah, but yet they're looking at them as if, oh, well, these careers aren't making as much as those other careers. They must be underpaid. And you're like, now if it was something similar, like a teacher versus a counselor, right, or a school nurse. But actually, no, school nurse would definitely be paid under what the other people are, because the school nurse, how many, even though they probably had a larger education expenses, because I'm not sure exactly the difference between what you need to be a certified nurse and what you need to be a certified teacher. But I would assume the nurse has to expend more time and energy getting her certification, or his or her certification, than a teacher would. But how much do they actually do for the school? Like, a nurse could go an entire school year without having anybody come into that office, because they are an as-needed type job. So it's like when somebody is sick or when somebody's injured and that sort of thing. But they could go the entire school year with everything going, roses up, or yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's practical, but it is a possibility that the nurse could go an entire year without having to do anything whatsoever. whereas the teacher has to be there every day teaching students. And like, I mean, when they get sick, they can get a substitute and all that sort of thing. But aside from those situations, the teacher has to be there every day for several hours a day. Whereas I know most of the time, like I'm not sure how this goes with all schools, but I know most of the time you're like, if it's towards the end of the day, like after lunch, and something happens, the nurse isn't there anymore, and so I don't even think they are there for the entire school day.
I've never actually encountered a school nurse before. Like, I know there's
Yeah.
probably a school nurse there, but elementary, junior high, high school, never really encountered a school nurse. If anything, they would like the school resource officer kind of seemed like he would be the guy who would help us if like any of us got injured.
All right, and just
Yeah.
to stop you right there, I will go to the full 8:30, and then I'll have to go. So
All right,
yeah, you
that's
can
cool.
continue on to what. Unless
Oh, that's actually all I had to really say is I've never actually encountered. Like, I'm not saying they don't
Yeah.
exist or anything, but yeah,
And-
it's like I actually pretty much agree with what you just said there.
Yeah, and this is what I was trying to explain to this person who was apparently a lawyer of some sort, but I actually argued with her. I'm like, well, you don't sound to me like a very good lawyer because you're losing a debate to someone with no professional experience in that manner. And that's kind of what lawyers are known for, right? Debating each other, presenting arguments, and all of your arguments are, I have shot down easily. I have no professional training in this. And then she kind of was like, oh, you're just being mean. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Well, that's why you're paid less. That right there is why you are paid less.
You patriarchal oppressor. I'm kidding.
Because if you talk to someone who is a high-priced attorney, someone who's a high-priced lawyer, they are gung-ho. They're super aggressive. And then this person is like, oh, you disagreed with me and you started insulting me. I'm just going to leave. And you're like, that's not a lawyer. That is, like, when you think a high-priced lawyer, do you think someone who gives up, like, well, did you hear what that prosecutor just said about me, about me and my client? All right, I don't want any part of this trial anymore. No, so that's why I was like, okay, if this person is actually a lawyer, they're probably not a trial lawyer, and they're probably not a financial lawyer because they've admitted several times that they're bad at math. So I'm gonna guess that if they are indeed a lawyer, and they say that they're paid well, I doubt they're on the higher end of the spectrum because lawyers, the average average lawyer income in the United States is $115,000 a year. And I'm like, no, you are not anywhere near the average. You are probably in the $60,000 or $70,000 range, if that. So
That's being complimentary towards her in the 60,000-70,000 range.
Yeah. So I know, but I mean, those are just my inferences based on the argument that was going on. But the point I was trying to make is, so this goes back to the nurses and teachers, think about how many lives a teacher impacts in a single year. So they probably have anywhere from 20 to 30 students, and and they may encounter those students' parents, like on parent-teacher night and all that sort of thing. So overall, throughout the entire year, maybe 60 people a year. And then you take a look at lawyers or CEOs or engineers. How many people do they impact on a daily basis? Well, depending on what industry they're in. If you're an engineer working on the iPhone, well, hey, you just came out with a newer version of the iPhone. You know how many people have an iPhone? Millions of people a year buy the new version of the iPhone. 60 people versus 1 million people. Even if you were on a team of a couple 100,000, even if you were on a team of, a couple 100,000, 1 million, that would be, I'm trying to do the math in my head and that doesn't work. Stupid Common Core, no. So even if you're on a team so the team behind the iPhone is probably not 100,000. The team behind Apple is probably 100,000. And the actual income from Apple is in the billions. So, I mean, it's clearly, you can see why that individual is paid really, really well, in the six-figure realm. It's because they have this bigger impact on the number of people, and their per capita contribution to that impact is smaller. So while it may look like, oh, this teacher's impacting 60 people a year, it's like, well, this person who's working at Apple, they affect a couple thousand people a day, maybe. And if you're talking about a lawyer, even in a lawyer, in a law situation, even if they only have like one client at a time, the outcome of those trials impacts everybody else who brings their cases to trial, or their cases to trial, because we have this what's that called? Where they use previous cases in order to establish grounds for existing cases. Oh man, I'm drawing a blank on that term. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I wouldn't know. Don't look at me.
These cases establish a precedence for future cases. So that impact is, like, oh, it was only affecting 2 different people. And it's like, yeah, but over the years, that's going to affect hundreds of people from that one action. The other thing is, if it's a person suing a company or a corporation, well, that impacts that corporation's standing in the public. That impacts all the employees for that corporation. So that lawyer, even though they're only dealing with one person at a time, it's actually has a much larger impact on society as a whole than, say, that teacher who is dealing with maybe 60 people total. And so that's where that's why what I was trying to explain is can explain the huge disparity in income is the impact of what you're doing, not necessarily how important you think. And okay, so there's this other lady who was a teacher, and she was trying to explain to me that she could be teaching the next Elon Musk. And I was like, could be. You might. So you should get paid as if you are. And I'm like, what? See, this is the kind of mindset behind people who think the pay, or who think the pay gap is real and it should be fixed sort of thing, is I should be paid on what my potential is rather than what my actual impact is. And I'm like, you can have all the potential in the world and not actually put it into action. And it's only what you've done that you get, that you either get rewarded or what's a good word for I want to say punished, but that's not quite the word I'm looking for. But I mean, you either get rewarded or punished based on your actions, not your potential, not your thought process, not what you desire or what you want. It's what you've actually done. And that's what seems to be lost on most of these people who are fighting for the wage gap and fighting for all of these crazy leftist policies, is they think it's all about intention. They think it's all about potential. They think it's all about what they could do as opposed to what they have done or what they are doing. It is taking the emphasis off of what people have done or the actual actions of the person.
And you go like, you say the teacher was all like, I could be teaching the next Elon Musk. Arguing off of rhetoricals is a very weak arguing point.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, here's the other thing. Even if she had taught the next Elon Musk, how much of his success is because of her and not his own?
Yeah. That's the thing when they're like, oh, I could teach the next Elon Musk. It's like, sure, you could, but how can we necessarily attribute his success to you? How can we link it back to you? That's why whenever people say that, it's like, I can't even take them seriously. It's like, really...
Yeah.
How do you know that? It's like me saying that if we allow gay people to get married in Australia, we might lose freedom, free speech or something. It's like you don't see how that works. I don't see how it works. That's just an analogy, of course.
Okay, so because we were kind of talking, me and Zach were kind of talking about this, though, the Bearing video, and like I said, I'm only going to go for about three more minutes or so, and then you guys can continue your stream, but I've got to go. So this is kind of way off the topic of education, whilst the other stuff has been kind of related. So, but I mean, I guess this is education, because people, there's this phrase, those who refuse to learn from history, you know what? They never taught me the rest in school, so... No, I mean, but it's the case. It's like the people who are looking at Australia and are looking at if they allow gays to, why could anybody make an argument about allowing homosexual marriage? And I'm like, well, look at what happened in the United States. People were saying, oh, it's a slippery slope, and then pretty soon they're going to start doing all of these things, and the argument against that was like, oh, no, we just want gay marriage, and then that's going to be the end of it. And then gay marriage became legal in the United States. And then what happened after that? Then you've got these bakeries who are being sued for not participating in a gay wedding. It's not that they weren't giving them cakes or giving them goods. Apparently, in that situation, I don't know if this is all situations, but in that one situation that I'm thinking of in particular, that gay couple had purchased items from this particular bakery in the past. The only thing the bakery was refusing to do was attend and cater the wedding, and then the gay couple sued them over that. And it's like, it's not like they were like, hey, we'll give you the cake, we'll give you the food, we just don't want to attend your wedding, sort of thing. And they got sued over that, and I believe that business is no longer in existence. Some of the other cases like that, there's also cases where religious organizations are either being sued by the city and state or by people because of their stances on gay relationships and gay marriages. And that was kind of the argument against gay marriage. That's what they were saying. Hey, if we allow this sort of thing, it's going to be used against our religious institutions. It's going to be used against our private citizens. It's going to be used against our businesses. And they're like, oh, no, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. And 2016, 2017, it is happening.
Yeah, to go on to what you said there, actually, I'm very, me and Zach can relate pretty close on this. I am very much in favor of private businesses deciding to do whatever the hell they want. Like, if a business were to say to me, okay, he's a white, straight male, we want him we don't want him we don't want to serve him. All right, it's your business, your decision. I think Cult of Dusty did a response video to Baring's video on it, and he pointed out that, well, yes, freedom of speech is not necessarily a guaranteed right under the Australian Constitution. Mm-hmm. I think that should be. He pointed out that there were certain loopholes, that there was nothing saying that you could be forced, that religious institutions could be forced into participating in gay marriage. I am in favor of completely getting the government out of marriage. The only justification I guess you could have for keeping it in marriage is to prevent child marriage. For the most part, I'm very much in favor of getting the government out of marriage, it's just pure hypotheticals. I think even Dusty said that it's a slippery slope fallacy that Baring was using. I would be very much in favor of saying private businesses, you do whatever you want, but public officials like Kim Davis, for instance, you do not have that same choice.
Yeah, so it would be a slippery slope fallacy if it didn't always happen. Like if it was you're just assuming things are going to get worse than this, and you're projecting all of these future outcomes, and those will never happen, and then they end up happening. It's like, well, it kind of isn't a slippery slope fallacy if it happens, if it's that domino that tips over and knocks down all these other dominoes. If that happens every time, it can't be the slippery slope fallacy. And so with that, I do have to go, and so I'm going to end the stream on my side. I guess you guys can hang out on yours because it is on S-Man's channel. So thanks for having me on, for talking about this sort of thing. I think we covered...
Talk to you later.
Yeah, I think we covered everything I wanted to cover.
Yeah, so what would be next week's topic, by curiosity? Would that be religion, or would that be... I don't know.
Well, can't keep talking about the whole education thing, if that's good of you.
I'll stay on with some of this for here. But
next week, I'm not sure yet, but I think religion, because we ended here on homosexual marriage and all that sort of thing. So I guess that kind of will tie into next week. We'll start talking about religion, and we can kind of piggyback it off of today's, because this is another area, is religion in schools that we didn't it wasn't on my list of things, but now that I'm thinking about it, we can have, so next week we can talk about religion overall and religion's impact on schools, because that does take. So
I like to be in that stream.
I'll send you the link.
Yeah, so cool. That'll be next Thursday on my channel at 7 p.m. Pacific time. All right.
All right.
At least that's what I'm shooting for. I don't know if we'll delays and issues and stuff like that. But thanks for coming.
I'll try to make it for that. Good night.
Have a good night, Zach.
Good night.
Good night. Make America great again.